Hello everyone. This lecture video is on the relationship between inflation, unemployment and output. Specifically, we shall try to find out whether there is any trade-off between inflation and unemployment. That is, whether it is possible for the policymakers to design suitable policies so as to reduce unemployment, and what are the costs of doing that. Moreover, we shall try to find out what will happen to such trade-off if the economy approaches a long run. The literature on inflation and unemployment nexus is quite rich. The issue, in fact, dates back to the days of David Hume. David Hume considered an economy which is operating under less than full employment condition. Under such an economy, if the money supply is increased, then the spending will increase. This increase will in turn create an economic expansion. The firms will be employing more laborers, so as a result, unemployment will also fall. However, as the demand for labor increases, then the firms will have to pay higher wages. So, in that way, the labor cost will increase and the firms will pass on these increased costs of production to the consumers so that prices will rise finally. In that way, Hume pointed out or hinted towards some inverse link between inflation and unemployment. So, if an economy wants to reduce the level of unemployment below a certain level, then it will have to incur some inflation. Later on, Jean Tinbergen conducted some econometric and quantitative analysis to establish the trade-off between the wage increase and the disequilibrium or unemployment in the labor market. His work was followed up by Lawrence Klein. Klein established a relationship between wage inflation and the output gap. So, as there is inflation or there is expectation about inflation, then the workers will demand higher wages. Moreover, these demand for higher wages will also depend on the level of unemployment in the economy. The work of Arthur Brown is particularly notable in this context. Arthur Brown precisely anticipated the relationship that later on came to be known as Phillips curve. So, Brown established the inverse link between the wage price inflation and the rate of unemployment in the labor market. In fact, given the contribution of Arthur Brown, some argue that the Phillips curve should be more accurately referred to as the Brown curve. Now we move on to the Phillips curve. A.W. Phillips, in his seminal 1958 paper, established a statistical relationship between wage inflation and unemployment. This relationship later on came to be known as the Phillips relationship or the Phillips curve itself. Phillips used the data for the UK economy. In fact, data was considered for two periods, namely 1861 to 1913 and from 1913 to 1957. Using the data, Phillips obtained a negative correlation between wage inflation and unemployment for the first period of study. The inverse relationship is depicted in the figure. On the vertical axis, we have shown the rate of wage inflation. On the horizontal axis, we have shown the unemployment rate, and the Phillips curve shows the negative relationship between these two. The second period of study, however, was not a stable one. This was a period characterized by significant economic and political turmoil. And Phillips found out that the relationship between inflation and unemployment was not strong enough for this second period. Phillips himself was not very satisfied with the nature of the relationship between wage inflation and unemployment. In fact, he did not himself state that there was any stable relationship between unemployment and inflation. This notion was a trivial deduction from his statistical findings. However, whatever be the problems associated with the Phillips curve and the relationship between wage inflation and unemployment, Phillips curve is often taken to be the single most important macroeconomic relationship. Later on, economists worked on the issue and they pointed out the significance of this Phillips curve in order to analyze the movement or the behavior of inflation in an economy. Lipsey, Samuelson, Solow, Friedman and Phelps were among the noted economists who modified the Phillips curve relationship, explained the relationship properly and gave it some workable nature. Although the initial Phillips curve gives us the relationship between wage inflation and unemployment, the Phillips curve can be easily restated as a relationship between price inflation and unemployment. Let's see how that could be done. As the wage rate increases, the firm's cost of production will increase. Now the firms will pass on this increased cost of production to the consumers in the market. As a result, there would be some increase in prices. Therefore, the wage increase will always be leading towards a price increase. Now, as the price increases, then the workers will be demanding more money wages rather, so that there will be some wage price spiral operating in the economy. This is basically the idea of the cost push inflation. If we argue along this line, then any wage inflation will always be accompanied by or will always imply the price inflation of the same dimension. Therefore, the Phillips curve can be restated as a relationship between inflation and unemployment rather than as a relationship between wage inflation and unemployment. For the rest of the analysis and discussion, we shall be depicting the Phillips curve in the more modified way, so that it will be giving us a relationship between inflation and unemployment. In fact, studies have pointed out towards the presence of inverse relationship between inflation and unemployment. Paul Samuelson and Robert Solow found out a negative correlationship between inflation and unemployment in the data for the United States. Samuelson and Solow provided some explanation for the presence of such inverse relationship. They pointed out that if there is higher aggregate demand in the economy due to any reason, then there will be a reduction in the unemployment. As employment increases, wages will also increase. Producers will pass on this increased labor cost to the consumer, so that prices will also rise. Accordingly, Samuelson and Solow depicted the Phillips curve as a relationship between price inflation and unemployment, and not simply between a relationship between wage inflation and unemployment. Samuelson and Solow in fact pointed out that the Phillips curve would offer the policymakers in a country a significant trade-off between inflation and unemployment. The policymakers can take up suitable fiscal and monetary policy to affect the aggregate demand, so that there will be a reduction in the unemployment, which will eventually lead to some higher inflation. It is then not possible to obtain both low inflation and low unemployment. The situation may be desirable for any country, But in fact, as is suggested by the Phillips curve, the policymakers will face a trade-off between inflation and unemployment. Once we say that the policymakers can use the Phillips curve to design the suitable monetary and fiscal policy, then at once the issue of stability of the Phillips curve arises. To use the Phillips curve for policy purposes, the relationship between inflation and unemployment must be stable over time. This led to further research into the Phillips curve relationship. In 1968, Milton Friedman introduced and analyzed issues that the monetary policy can solve and the issues that monetary policy cannot solve. Friedman pointed out that through a suitable monetary policy, an economy can move along the Phillips curve and can choose the most desired combination of inflation and unemployment, but unfortunately that is applicable only in the short run. In the long run, there is no trade-off between inflation and unemployment. This was emphasized by Edmund Phelps also. Their idea was based on the monetarist proposition, which is basically reformulation of the classical quantity theory of money. The monetarist proposition says that in the short run, the monetary policy or the quantity of money will be having impact on real variables also, so that by manipulating the quantity of money, the output and employment can be changed. In the long run, however, money is neutral, so that changes in quantity of money will have its impact only on the price level. All the other real variables will be determined by the real factors. Thus, in the short run, the trade-off between inflation and unemployment might exist, but Friedman and Phelps concluded that there is actually no reason to believe that in the long run, inflation may be related to the unemployment rates in an economy. Keeping this history of Phillips curve at the back of our mind, we shall now move on to consider the trade-off between inflation and unemployment in greater detail. First of all, we shall be considering the natural rate theory of Friedman. Then we shall move on to the Keynesian view of inflation, unemployment and output. The natural rate theory was introduced by Milton Friedman. This theory is central to the discussion of output, employment and inflation in the monetarist theory. Edmund Phelps developed the theory independently apart from monetarism. In the monetarist's proposition, we find that in the short run, changes in the quantity of money affect the real variables, for example, output and employment in the economy. In the long run, however, our real variables are determined by real factors and the quantity of money has impact only on the price level. In the natural rate theory, there is an equilibrium level of output and there is some level of employment or unemployment associated with that level of output. This level of unemployment is determined exclusively by the real factors such as availability of factors of production, technology and other institutional factors. This rate of unemployment is called the natural rate of unemployment and the level of output which is associated with this natural rate of unemployment is called the natural rate of output. The natural rate of unemployment can be derived from the labor market itself. In the diagram, we have shown the labor demand and the labor supply curves as functions of the real wage rate. On the vertical axis, we show the real wage rate. On the horizontal axis, we measure the employment. The demand curve for labor is given by the negatively sloped marginal productivity of labor curve, and the supply curve of labor is upward rising. Initial equilibrium is attained at E0, so that the real wage rate is W by P0. The employment is NF. So, in the natural rate theory, this employment NF is the natural rate of employment. If we know the total labor force, then subtracting NF from the total labor force, we get the natural rate of unemployment. Using the production function, we can find out the level of output or the natural rate of output as YF, which is corresponding to the natural rate of employment NF. Now, in this model, the economy is likely to operate at this full employment level. Now, when the economy is operating at the full employment level, then that does not necessarily mean that the unemployment is zero. The economy is at natural rate of unemployment means that those who want to work at the going wage rate will be getting some work, so that any kind of unemployment is voluntary in nature. It may be search unemployment or frictional unemployment, but that is not involuntary. In such model, any change in aggregate demand will cause unemployment to fall temporarily below the natural rate and the prices would rise. Over the longer run, however, the expectations will adjust and the economy will not be able to produce a level of output which would push unemployment level below the natural rate. The increased money supply, which is affecting the aggregate demand, would only lead to inflation. Expectations form a crucial role in analysis of inflation and unemployment in the Friedman's model. The economy operates in purely competitive market both for the goods and for the labors. Prices adjust automatically to clear the markets. In determining the amounts they would supply and demand, both the suppliers and the demanders take into account their expectations about the future prices for what they buy or sell today. Let us take examples. If the workers or seller of any other factors expect that the prices of the goods that they must buy tomorrow will be higher than they are today, then that is going to affect their marginal utility of today's money wage rate. It will also affect the marginal utility of the labor offered today. So therefore, they will be offering their labor or they will be supplying any other factor that they own only if they get higher factor prices. So wages or any other factor income which is payable today should increase as fast as any expected future rise in the prices of goods to be bought tomorrow. The buyers of the factors will also think similarly. So if there is any demand for increasing the payment of factor prices, then the buyers of factors will be agreeable to pay those higher prices only if they expect future prices of output to rise as fast as factor prices now are rising. If it is anticipated that future prices would rise more rapidly than today's price, then the workers will tend to withdraw their labor, whereas the buyers of the factors of production, on the other hand, would increase their demand. Therefore, today's rate of price rise would necessarily increase towards tomorrow's expected rise. The reverse is also true. If today's prices are rising faster than tomorrow's expected price, then the factor suppliers will increase their current offers, and the buyers of the factors will tend to reduce their demand for factors. Therefore, the today's rate of price increase will fall towards tomorrow's expected rate. Therefore, in the Friedman's model, the expectation is basically adaptive expectation. Today's inflation rate will depend on and in equilibrium must be equal to the yesterday's expected rate for today. Moreover, it is the current rate of inflation that will be determining the expected rate of inflation. So, if prices have been stable, then they will ordinarily be expected to remain stable. So, if they have been rising at some rate or falling at some rate, then they will be ordinarily expected to continue to do the same. These expectations will make the buyers and the sellers act in such a way that these expectations will be confirmed. Now we assume that the economy operates at this natural rate of unemployment. There is some search unemployment or frictional unemployment, but we assume that this search for employment is not beating the money wage rate down. Moreover, the firms are not bidding up the money wage rates because they are hiring the exact amount of labor that they want to hire at the current wage rate. The prices are stable in the economy. Prices have been stable so that they are expected to remain stable. Now, for prices to remain stable, the quantity of money should also remain stable. Therefore, to start with, the economy is at natural rate of unemployment. Growth rate of money supply, which is M dot, is 0, and the growth rate of inflation is also 0. Now, seeing these so-called unemployed, the politicians or the policy makers conclude that the economy needs some stimulus. The central bank is induced to increase the money supply. As money supply increases, aggregate demand for goods will also increase. Therefore, the demand for labor will also go up. The money wage rate begins to rise. Now, some of the unemployed workers expect that prices will remain stable because at this point, the expectation of price increase is that the prices will remain stable and the inflation rate will be 0. Therefore, with this expectation, as the money wage rate rises, the laborers take those increases in money wage rate as increase in real wage rate. Therefore, they will be supplying more labor, so unemployment will decline. In the diagram, now the economy moves on to the point A where unemployment falls to U1, whereas inflation increases to I1. This increase in price is inevitable because as the wage rates rise, after a certain lag, cost of production will also rise and hence the prices will rise. This violates the workers' expectation of stability. They now realize that P dot E is no longer 0, but rather the prices are changing and the rate of inflation is I1. Therefore, they will adjust their expectation accordingly and they will start some inflation bargaining. They will offer their labor if the money wage rate rises further than this increased price. So that will be requiring further stimulus in the form of growing money supply. This increase in money supply will actually do nothing but to increase the prices even faster. So, in short, over full employment can be maintained only by an ever accelerating inflation fed by an ever accelerating growth in the money supply. There appears to be a short-run Phillips curve which passes through the UF. As money supply increases and aggregate demand increases, then temporarily unemployment will be falling to U1. However, this is purely a temporary phenomenon. Workers soon realize that the prices are not stable, so that they revise their expectation upward. The Phillips curve, which is drawn on the basis of a given price expectation, will be shifting towards right. The economy then will be moving from point A to point B in the long run. The effect is that once again the economy is back at the natural rate of unemployment UF, but the anticipated inflation is now not 0 but rather I1. Let us assume that I1 is say 10%. So the implication is that in the long run the natural rate of unemployment can be maintained not at an inflation rate of 0% but at an inflation rate and money supply growth rate of 10%. Once again, starting from point B, if government decides to give further monetary stimulus, then the economy will be moving towards this point C along the given Phillips curve, PC1. So, inflation rises further to I2 and unemployment falls temporarily to U2. Now, once again, this is not a stable situation. Over time, the workers realize that prices have actually increased not by 10%, which is I1, but rather by I2, which is say 20%, so that they will adjust their inflationary expectation. Phillips curve will further shifts towards right, so the economy will once again come back to the natural rate of unemployment but at a higher rate of inflation. Hence, in long run, there is no trade-off between inflation and unemployment. The long run Phillips curve is vertical. The implication is clear-cut. If the government or the monetary authority wants to keep the level of unemployment below the natural rate of unemployment, then they will have to accept an ever accelerating rate of inflation. Of course, rate of inflation can be reduced, but only at the cost of some real unemployment. We shall be talking about this policy later on when we shall be talking about the disinflation. Long run vertical Phillips curve provides an argument for the central bank independence. In most of the countries, the central banks have operational independence over the monetary policy. Let's see why that is so. Now, suppose that a government is in charge of monetary policy in a particular nation. So, this government can pursue or induce the central bank to change the interest rate or to affect the money supply. Now, suppose that the particular year we are considering is the general election year. So then the government may decide to give short-term stimulus to the economy in the form of expanded monetary policy. As the short-term Phillips curve is in operation, this stimulus will reduce unemployment and increase output in the short run. However, this will increase the inflationary pressure in the economy. Soon the workers will adjust their inflationary expectations and the economy will once again come back to the natural rate of unemployment, but this time with a higher level of inflation. So therefore, in the longer run, the economy is in a worse state and it would have been better in the absence of the stimulus. There are certain other problems also. People, the workers and the firms may tend to believe that just before the election, the government will have an incentive to go for an expansionary monetary policy. Therefore, just before the election, they will adjust their inflationary expectations accordingly and they will start raising prices and wages even before the election in anticipation of the expansionary monetary policy. In that case, inflation will rise, but unemployment will not fall in the economy. So, accordingly, the economy will come back immediately to the new long run equilibrium, so that the short run trade off between inflation and unemployment may not be attainable. If the responsibility of changing the monetary policy is at the hand of the central bank, the results would be different. Since the central bank would have no incentive to give stimulus to the economy just before any kind of general election, then people will not revise their inflationary expectations. So, in that case, the short run trade off between inflation and unemployment may be attainable in the economy. The situation that we considered earlier is typically an example of a Nash equilibrium. A Nash equilibrium is defined by the strategies of the players in this way, that I am doing the best I can given what you are doing, and you are doing the best you can given what I am doing. Now here the firms and government will have an incentive to go for an expansionary monetary policy just before the election. So, in anticipation, if they do not increase their inflationary expectations now, then they are going to lose in future, because their prices and wages will be lower in the real term. Therefore, the short run Phillips curve will shift instantaneously upward, so that the new equilibrium is obtained where the economy is operating at the natural rate of unemployment but at a higher inflation rate. Now, what about the government? People anticipate that it will be taking some expansionary monetary policy, but will it still have the same incentive? Problematic for the government, because in anticipation the workers and the firms have already revised their inflationary expectations, so that the economy is already operating under some high inflation rate. So if the government tends to give the so-called stimulus once again, then that will lead to some ever accelerating inflation. Now, if at this point the government has no incentive to give stimulus to the economy, and if the other agents, the firms and the workers know this, then they will also have no incentive to change their price and wage setting behavior further. So, then the equilibrium that will be reached is a earlier, this situation may be avoided if the monetary policy is exclusively at the hand of some independent monetary authority. Now we shall consider the Keynesian view of inflation, output and employment. In the Keynesian model, the workers frame their expectation on the basis of the past prices, so that the expectation is basically an adaptive expectation. First of all, we consider the part A of the diagram, which shows the aggregate supply and aggregate demand curve for the economy. The aggregate supply curve is upward rising and it is based on a given expectation of price increase, which is P0. So initially there is no expectation for price increase. The initial aggregate demand curve is given by AD0, equilibrium is attained at point A, so that prices are P0 and output is Y0. In the labor market also, we see that the demand curve for labor is given as MPN into P0 and the supply curve of labor is the upward rising function and it depends on the expected price. In the labor market, the initial equilibrium is attained at point K, so that money wage rate is W0, employment is N0. So corresponding this employment N0, the output level produced is Y0. Let us now assume that the aggregate demand increases, maybe due to some expansionary monetary policy or any other type of policy. So AD curve shifts from AD0 to AD1. New equilibrium is attained at point B, so P1 is the new price, so prices have increased. From the labor market, it is clear that the demand curve for labor will be shifting upward. The supply curve of labor is not changing because it is based on a given expectation about price increase. In the short run, as the price rises, then the workers cannot immediately understand that. So initially they take prices to be stable so that following the price increase, there will be no shift in the labor supply curve. So money wage rate increases to W1 and employment increases to N1. If aggregate demand increases further, then there will be further shift in the labor demand curve. Accordingly, output employment will increase. So in this short-run model, there is a negative relationship between inflation and the unemployment rate. If aggregate demand rises at a faster rate, then the rightward shifts in the aggregate demand curve will be greater and greater. And all other things remaining unchanged, the greater will be the increase in the output and employment. This establishes a trade-off between inflation and unemployment in the Keynesian model in the short run. In the long run, however, the situation will change. In the long run, as the prices change, the workers will revise their inflationary expectations accordingly. So let us now consider the initial aggregate demand curve to be AD0 and the aggregate supply curve as AS, which is based on the given price expectation PE0. Now suppose that aggregate demand curve changes from AD0 to AD1, so that price increases from P0 to P1. However, since this is a long run, the workers will be having enough time to revise their inflationary expectations upward. As the inflationary expectation increases, then the aggregate supply curve will be shifting towards left. So now we have a new aggregate supply curve, which is AS PE1 based on the new inflationary expectation. At the equilibrium, then the price level rises to P1, but the output remains unchanged at Y0. Coming back to the labor market, we see that the demand curve for labor will be given as MPN into P0 initially. The labor supply curve is once again upward rising, but it is based on the inflationary expectation PE0. As the price level rises from P0 to PE1, the demand curve for labor shifts to MPN into P1. Now, at this time, the laborers will be having their expectations revised instantaneously, so that their supply curve of labor will be shifting towards left. New supply curve of labor is NS, which is based on the price expectation of PE1. At the new equilibrium, money wage rate rises to W1, but employment remains unchanged at N0. So therefore, in this context, even if the price level rises, the level of employment and output will be remaining unchanged, so that there is no trade-off between inflation and unemployment in the long run. Whatever be the level of inflation, the economy will always be operating at the full employment level of output. So we have seen that in the long run, aggregate demand has no effect on output and employment even in the Keynesian model. But that does not necessarily mean that there is no need for intervention or stabilization policies. The aggregate demand policies will try to stabilize the output and employment, but that is in the short run. Such stabilization policies keep the economy at the equilibrium level when there is any shock to the aggregate demand or aggregate supply. It is often mentioned that the private sector is basically stable if its operations are not controlled artificially. Therefore, the shocks to the private sector demand will not be that destabilizing for the level of output and employment. And it is mentioned that even if such shifts occurred, they would have very little effect on output if the government manipulates the money supply in the right way. There is, however, one point of discomfort, namely that the unemployment may be too high. The government may then manipulate the monetary policy so as to ensure that the unemployment and output were at some desirable levels. However, as we have already mentioned that the monetary policy cannot actually attain this objective. Any attempt to reduce unemployment rate at some desired level will be accompanied by ever-accelerating inflation in the longer run. The Keynesians, however, believe that the private sector aggregate demand is not that stabilizing, particularly because of the instability of investment demand. So that the Keynesians maintain that even if the money supply is unchanged, the unstable private sector aggregate demand can cause large and sustained fluctuations in income. So therefore, the Keynesians believe that the monetary and fiscal policies should be used to protect the economy against such undesirable changes.